I have published 40 books in the last 20 years, and I have one book coming out every year for the next 3 years. Every writer has a subject, something that they love to write about, something that talks to them. My subject is history. Some subject is fantasy. I don't write fantasy. I don't write about science. I write about history. I write nonfiction, and I write biography, which is part of nonfiction, and I write historical fiction. You can have novels written that are historical fiction. That means you take a true story that's set someplace, and you write about real people, but you might put in other people who you make up their struggles. So there are two ways to tell stories about history. I'm going to tell you about some of the books I have written and why I write them. I will only write about people or events that I think are important and people who I believe do important things. This man did incredibly important things for the whole United States, and some say for the world. Do you know who he is?
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King Jr. And what he did was he taught us something new. He taught us that when you're in a world, now we might have known this before because you know what, we are Jewish, and we know about prejudice, don't we? And we know that our people have had difficult times. But Martin Luther King, who's black, he also came from a world in which there were difficult times. And he lived in an era in which black children and white children were separated the same way as during the Holocaust during World War II, Jews were shunted off from Christians. And what Martin Luther King taught us and what he learned was that you can change things without your fists. You can use something called words, big words, and that's what he did. He made speeches that people listened to and inspired them. Now, if I want to write a biography, because this is a biography of Dr. King, I must do my research. When I start a book, I don't necessarily know that much about a person. I know enough to know that Dr. King was a great man and I want to write about him, but that doesn't mean I know how to write his story. That doesn't mean I know what his life like was when he was little and when he grew up, or where did he get his ideas and what were his parents like, where did he live. I don't know those things. So I go and do research. To do this book, I went to a special library called the Schomburg Center for Black Culture and Black History. It's in Manhattan, on 135th Street in Lenox Avenue. And I went there, and I said to the librarian, I am lost without librarians, let me tell you. I am lost without them. I said to the librarian, I want to do research on Dr. King. I want to read every speech he made that's published. I want to read sermons that he made. I want to read letters if you have them. I want to have poems if you have them. And I want to read his autobiographies, and because he wrote more than one autobiography. And I want to read biographies that other people wrote about his life. Those people will give me a lot of facts. She said, okay. And this was the day. You're not going to believe there was a day before the internet. But this was the day before the internet, when it was really hard to do research because this is what you had to do. You had these stacks of like wooden trays, and it might say on the top, famous Americans or famous black Americans or Martin Luther King, and you pull open the drawer, and there would be these little index cards with the name of the book, and you'd have to take a pencil and paper, and you'd have to write down. Am I exaggerating, teachers? It was so much harder. Write down the name of the book, the author of the book, the year it was published, and the call letter. Because in the library I'm going to, you couldn't pull the books off the library. They were somewhere else. Now when I want to research a book, I go right to the Schomburg Center. I can stay in my house, which is 3 hours away from the Schomburg Center, and I can go on their catalog, and I can get a list of all those books, and I can cut and paste and copy, and I can make my own list for myself. those days. Anyway, that's when the research is a little more complicated. Excuse me, you two, it's enough. That's in the days when the research was more complicated, but that's just the beginning. Then I have to read the books. And I stayed there for 3 months, reading the speeches of Dr. King and reading the biographies people wrote about it and writing down the details of everything. And I still had no idea how I was going to tell the story, because every good book needs a hook. You don't start off a book and say, Martin Luther King was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and you put the year. That is boring. You've got to find a way to tell a story that pulls the reader in. You've got to find a way that only you think of, not your neighbor, not your teacher, not your sister, just you. And that's what I'm looking for, the hook. And I said to myself, I don't have a hook yet for this book. All right, now I'll read what Dr. King wrote about his life. I'll read his autobiography. What do I have to watch out about when I read somebody's autobiography? If I'm writing nonfiction, yes? What might I have to be concerned about? Any ideas? Okay, I would say it a little different. Maybe it's not that they're not telling the truth. I don't think Dr. King would lie. But maybe Dr. King's memory's not so good. Maybe there are some things he doesn't want to write about that are very personal. So after I read Dr. King's autobiographies, there were about 4 of them, I checked them against the books I've read by other writers who studied all the facts and analyzed and compared. And luckily, Dr. King wrote an autobiography that gave me the hook on how to tell this story. Here's what I read in Dr. King's autobiography. He wrote, everywhere in his hometown, he looked up when he saw these signs, white only. And these signs made him feel bad. And his mother told him the signs were in all southern cities and towns, and that made him feel worse. And then he wrote, he remembered what his mother told him. And she said, you are as good as anyone. And all of a sudden I thought about the power of words. Words can make us feel bad, you know. White only. No Jews allowed. Those words can make us feel bad. But we can remember other words that people say to us. And I thought, this is great. Wow, he must have felt great when his mother said that. And then he wrote about being in church. He wrote about reading from the Bible, and the words made him feel good. He wrote about singing the hymns, and the words made him feel good. He wrote about listening to his father preach, and the words made him feel good. And he said to himself, when I grow up, I'm going to get big words too. And all of a sudden, I had the hook. I knew how to tell the story. I would put information about Dr. King's life, and the kids would be able to read sentences from Dr. King's speeches. Everyone can be great. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. Now, why do you think I wanted to put Dr. King's words in the book? What does that add to my book? Yes?
It adds the, like when you put Dr. King's words, it's making the reader feel like Martin Luther King Jr. is speaking to them.
Absolutely. You can feel you are with that person. And the same thing goes for this man, Abraham Lincoln. And I found his speeches, of course, but I also found something incredible. I found poems that he wrote when he was like 7 and 8 years old. Here's one of the first poems Abraham Lincoln ever wrote. Abraham Lincoln is my name, and with my pen I wrote the same. I wrote in both haste and speed, and left it here for fools to read. He didn't know he was going to be president of the United States. He just was writing a poem when he was a kid. Now, when we do a book that has pictures, we always try to choose an artist who will do a beautiful job. This artist, Brian Collier, does what we call collage. And I'm sure you've done them in your art class because I've seen some beautiful artwork here already. What he does is he cuts up newspapers and magazines in different colors and he puts them together to form people's suits, the way they're walking, the background. And every time there's a face, he paints the face in watercolors. But look at the cover of these two books. What's missing from these covers that are usually there? Yes?
Well, usually there would be the title right there, except I think the title's on the back.
Okay, why do you think we decided not to put the title on the front? We decided this. This was our decision, yes?
The picture already shows everything.
The picture shows who this is about, and we know, most of us know this, what this person looks like. The other thing is that the picture of Dr. King is very special and different from most pictures you have ever seen of Dr. King. Do any of you know why this picture looks a little different? Yes?
I think that looks like a little different from, because it's like a different from those two books.
Well, that's not exactly it, but good thinking.
The smile.
He's smiling, and when we see pictures of Dr. King, he usually is not smiling. He's very serious. He's giving a speech. And it was so unusual that we said, oh, no way do we want this picture to be covered up, Dr. King's face. Now, let's look at Lincoln. Now, 4 people work on a picture book, a writer and editor. You know, what does an editor do? You know what an editor does. What does an editor do, yes?
An editor does, like, the editor reads it first and see if there's anything that you need to correct. Like, let's say by accident you spelled a word wrong, that they would correct and edit it and put the real word or make it a better sentence.
That's more important than, don't tell your teachers I'm saying this. But spelling is not the most important thing. We can always correct our spelling. But it's our thinking. Am I right, teachers? It's our thinking that we have to worry about. So the teacher, the editor, like the teacher, doesn't just correct the spelling. The editor teaches us how to think and where the sentence is not strong. Now, that's what the editor does. The artist paints the pictures, and the art director brings some new ideas. What's the background behind Abe Lincoln? What's the background? In the back, girl. But what's missing from the American flag? That's not the whole American flag.
There's stars.
The stars. And what else is missing from the American flag? What else is missing? Yes?
The rest of the stripes.
Well, that's true, the rest of the stripe. We have enough stripe. Good thinking, yes?
The blue.
The blue. So here's what the art director does. The art director puts the blue on the back, adds some of the stars, and then she does something even special. She says, you know, kids only go to the computer now. How many of them really write letters after they learn how to print? They type their papers on the computers. They don't know, maybe. And they don't think about, maybe, that Abraham Lincoln had no typewriter, and he had no computer, and he wrote everything by hand. She said, I am going to find Abraham Lincoln's signature. Well, we have the internet now, and there's a site that we can go to called the National Archives, and it's got all the speeches of Abraham Lincoln on it. And on that site, she found Abraham Lincoln's signature. She made it a little thicker than she saw it, okay, so it would be more readable, but she said, every time, Doreen, you have some of Lincoln's words in the book, I'm going to put it as if it's Lincoln's penmanship, and I'm going to give it the color blue, because she's trying to unify aspects of the book. Now, these are what we call kind of full-scale biographies, where you've got a lot of information, but one day, I was thinking about the fact that there are so many kids, Jewish and non-Jewish, who do not know about the history of Jews who came to America. And I thought, I'm going to write a book about them. So I had to go to another special library. It's called the Dorrit Room in 42nd Street, New York Public Library. And again, I went right to the reference librarian. I said, and now, of course, I had the internet, I was lucky. I said, can you lead me, though, to the historians who really wrote the great books about Jewish American history? And he said, sure, Doreen. And he took me on the internet, and he circled, we downloaded it, we copied it, and he circled the people he thought were great. And then I started to put together my book. Now, my book has to start from the beginning of history in the United States when Jews are here. And I found this incredible man, this Dutch Jew, Asser Levy. He came to New Amsterdam in New York. He set up a business. He went about his business. And I guess we call him the governor of New York, that the Dutch appointed, was very prejudiced against Jews. Now this is happening in like 1640, 1650. So lots of people have already done research on Asser Levy to give me the information. And what the Dutch governor was doing was, he was taxing the Jews because he needed money for their militia, for protection, like a little army, we would call it. But he wouldn't let the Jews be in the army. And so Asser Levy sued him. He used words. He wrote a petition. He wrote a letter to Holland, and he got it changed. I never knew about this man. Knowing about this man gave me great pride. I want to just show you when the artist does a picture. Now, there are no photographs of Asser Levy, but there are etchings and paintings of people who lived then and how they dressed. And when the artist starts to make the artwork and do the watercolors, the artist has to do research to make sure what he says is right about what he draws is correct. And that would go for all the pictures in the book. And then, of course, I found out and knew that Harry Houdini, the magician, was Jewish. And of course, he was one of the most famous people in the world. I wanted to include him in my book. I got lucky. I know an expert about Harry Houdini. My cousin studied with Houdini's brother. He had a brother who was a magician. So I called up my cousin and I said, I want to write something for kids. I want to write about an incident that happened that I think is exciting. Can you help me? And he said, I certainly can. And he went through all the books that he had on Houdini, and he found me a newspaper article that happened in New Orleans, and it was describing everything that happened. And then I recreated, I did not make up, I recreated the story of this amazing magic trick of Houdini's, where he's just chained everywhere, around here and whatever, and he jumps into the water, and you know if you jump and you sink down in the water, you gotta come up for air. And the secret is, how did Houdini get out of those chains? My cousin told me the secret, but I did not tell you. I can't, I promised my cousin. In fact, my cousin has, it's called the water tank that Houdini used. He got in a tank filled with water, and he filled it with water, and of course, again, he was tied up and whatever, and then he got out of the chains, he got out of the locks, and he emerged. And my cousin used to be able to do this trick, but now, of course, he's quite old. Now, here's what happens. You're doing one book, and you're thinking about doing other books, and you're not thinking about doing other books, and sometimes something happens that's unexpected. While I was researching this book in a special library on Jewish history, the head reference librarian comes over one day. You see, you sit at these long tables and they bring over the books that you order. He comes over with 3 big volumes. And he says, I said, I look at them. I said, I didn't order these. He said, I know, but I think you'll be interested in them. I looked at the title. anthology on armed resistance during the Holocaust. I said, I didn't order this. I'm working on Jewish Americans. He said, I think you'll be interested. He left the books there. At the end of the day, they take away your books, the ones you ordered. He used to take those 3 books away, and the next day he used to bring them back and put them next to me. And after about a week or so, I knew he wasn't going to give up till I looked to see what was in those books. And I started reading. How many of you know what the Holocaust was? Okay. So we know about this dark, terrible time in Jewish history. But what I didn't know was all the, hands down, I'm going to give you a chance to talk. What I didn't know was all the information in this book that was about how Jews fought back. And sometimes they fought back with words, like Dr. King fought back. Sometimes they fought back by helping each other and feeding each other and hiding each other. And kids as young as 14, helping smuggle other kids over the mountains. They helped people by forging. And little by little, I began to put together a new book. A book I never planned to write. I didn't know I was going to write except with the help of that librarian. That's why I told you how important the library is. This is the hardest book I ever wrote. This is a difficult book to write. I had to read things that were very hurtful. But I also read about the courageous 12-year-old Muddle Schlein, who was a violinist whose parents had been murdered, and he joined the partisans. Those are the guerrilla warfare. And he had his violin. He was very talented, and he was sent to spy for the Jewish partisans to a town to find out where the troops were going, the German troops were going, how many were there, what they were doing. And he took his violin, Muddle. This is a true story. He took his violin and he went in front of the church. And there were other musicians in front of the church. And then came this German officer who went like this to Muddle. Told him to come. Took him to the restaurant where the soldiers, the German soldiers, ate and dined before they went off to the front. And he brought him to the pianist. He talked to him in German. Muddle did not understand German. He was Polish. And the man said to him, "Do you read music?" And Muddle said, I read music. He gave him a piece by Tarowski, a very famous composer. He said, "Play it," and he played it. And the German nodded to the pianist, and they said, "You're hired." Of course, he did not want to be hired. He wanted to spy and roam around, but now he knew he had a front that he could use. He stayed there playing the violin, and he used to eat at night. He used to eat with the cook downstairs, and he noticed one night that in the walls where they had of the storehouse for the food, there were like open cracks and crevices where you could hide things. And he got the idea that he was going to make a bomb, and he was going to destroy the railroad tracks and the restaurants and anyone who was around. And he went back to the partisans who were across the lake. He told them what they wanted to do. They taught him how to put the bomb together. And when he used to leave work at night, he would hide his violin in one of those cracks that you couldn't see anything in, and he would take his empty case with him. And when he came back the next day, he would have the equipment to make the bomb in the case, hide it there, back and forth many days until everything was there and until he was ready to set off the bomb, which he did. Now, the story has kind of a sad ending, but not a completely sad ending, because what happened was that Muddle was killed by a German raid when the partisans, when they were fighting. But the leader, the Jewish leader, Bishop Gilpin, loved Muddle, and he took Muddle's violin and his case with him. He carried it with him through the forest. He took it into battles. He went to work. He went to fight with the Soviet army. He took it. He went to Germany afterwards to help Jews who were there, who wanted to go to different countries because he was a translator. And then he went to Israel to live, and that violin and that case was with him the whole time. years ago, an Israeli violin maker who restored, you know when your violins get bad or your musical instruments get bad, someone has to come in and help you fix them. He decided he was going to collect all the violins and all the musical instruments that had been used by the Jews in the forest. And he said, must have put a notice in the newspaper. And one day, Mishik Milton's grandson comes with this case and this violin. And he says, this is the violin of a 12-year-old Jewish partisan who fought with my grandfather. I will give you this violin if you, and you can restore it, but you must promise me it will not end up just in a museum. It will be played. And 5 years later, 36 restored violins, along with Muddle's, were played at the wall in Jerusalem in a concert. So Muddle's life and history are still with us. And that's why I love to write books, because there's history all around. I just want to talk about one more thing, and then I need some very tough questions from you, because that's why I came here. Would you just feel the top of this? And this book is going to be in the library, so you'll all have a chance. Just describe to me what you felt. This is Braille on the top. The reason this is Braille on the top, it's in the library, you'll get a chance. The reason it's Braille on the top, hands down, is that this book is about Helen Keller, who I'm sure you know about. She was blind and she was deaf, and she read Braille, and she also learned to think and read and learn what words were by manual language, manual hand signals, and they are in the back of the book. I wanted my whole book to be in Braille along with just printed words. But it just takes up too much room in Braille. But the book will be in Braille so that children who are not sighted or blind will be able to read about Helen Keller. But there was a slightly different problem about the cover of this book with Helen Keller. What is different with the way Helen is portrayed and the way Lincoln is portrayed? What's the difference? Yes? Okay, she's in a profile, and there's a reason she's in a profile. Helen Keller was very sensitive about her eyes, and they just kind of vacant. If you looked at them, they didn't really have any focus because she didn't have all the things that we are lucky enough to have to make us sighted. Now today, if you were blind, you might wear sunglasses, right? But in those days, they didn't do that. So she preferred to be photographed in profile. So Matt, the artist who did his research, and he did a lot of research, he found that out and he said, of course, I have to respect how she felt. I will put her in profile as much as I can in the book, but he also decided to have her smelling a rose. Can anyone think why he might have her? Yes, dear. What, dear? She can smell, and that's one of the ways she learned. She learned by touch. She was allowed to touch an egg when a chicken was coming out. Her teacher took her to some farmer, and she felt it cracking and opening, and she used to put her hands near a horse's neck, and when the horse would go, she could feel it. She could feel it. So smell and touch were very important. Now I have one more thing to show you, and then I'm waiting for your tough questions. I don't want you to think that when I do these books, and I send them in, that they are in such great shape. And before I send them in, I have rewritten them at least 5 or 6 times. And still, there are comments all over. I'm going to read you some of these comments. And maybe you've heard these comments from your teachers. I don't know. Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yes.
I need some more details.
Yes.
You're repeating this.
Yes.
Oh, and then this was a Chinese story that I wrote, and I wrote, in a crevice in a rock she saw sprawling green leaves. How pungent they will taste with rice, she thought. She tugged at them and pulled out a long white turnip, and she wrote long white, a scallion, and then I felt good because you see she didn't know anything about Chinese vegetables, and I could tell her that it was a turnip. So sometimes you are right and the teacher's not right. And then she said, wait a minute. Then she said, Doreen, the story's pretty good, but it's dragging a little. I want you to cut out about 25 sentences. The whole thing was only 125 sentences. She wanted me to cut out 1/5 of what I have done. How do you think I felt? How do you think I felt? Happy? Why would I be happy? Maybe right. Why would I be happy? I think that's not it, but I happen to be happy, but that's not the reason. And I do want to say, I didn't love that she wanted me to cut these out. I'm not going to lie. Yes? That's right. She's helping me make it better. She's telling me it's not moving fast enough. And you know what? These editors, they're always telling you something, even when they don't agree that it's all right. This is from the Helen Keller book. See that crossing out there? See that in pink? We're almost ready for this book to be finished. And she says, can we take out some of those words, Doreen? They're not needed until the book is going into print. We are working to make it better and better at every minute. That does not mean it will be perfect. There is no such thing as something that is perfect, except maybe Sandy Koufax's game that was a no-hitter. But there aren't too many things that are perfect. Okay, we have time for questions. I like some real tough questions. And I need them to be loud and proud so all your friends can hear them too. Yes? I want questions. I'll get comments later.
Why did you want to write a lot of books?
I wanted to write a lot of books because there are a lot of great stories that have not been told, and I am going to tell them. Great question. When I was a kid, and until I was about 20. Now I'm going to tell you what I wanted to be, and you're not going to laugh, right? Can I count on you?
Yes.
Can I really count on you? I'm going to watch you. You sure?
Yes.
Now, I can't count on him. Okay, he admits it. That's okay. I don't mind. I wanted to be, and I may still want to be. A pop singer. Oh, never laugh at anybody. What's going to happen? Now listen, what's going to happen when you turn on American Idol for older Americans one night? And you see this woman who you recognize. She's got a white glove up here. She's got fake diamond bracelet here, long hair, slinky dress. And it's me. And if you don't vote for me, I'll never be with you. But you know what? I did teach music and I did love to sing. And I think it's a hard life to be a performer. I'm not joking that I wanted to be one. It's a very hard life because it's a kind of lonely life and takes you away from your family and things. And being a writer, it's not such an easy life, but at least you're at home doing interesting things and you can be with your friends and family. Good question. Other questions? Yes, in the back.
What inspired you to be a writer?
What inspired me were all these stories that hadn't been told. Things like Asa Levy, things like Muddle. Knowing that Abe Lincoln started from nothing and he learned. Knowing that John Lennon, whose music I do adore, he dreamed of being a pop star and he became one. How did I know that? Because when I did the research for my book on John Lennon, when I did the research, he wrote about how he secretly dreamed of being a pop star, an artist, and a rock star, and that's why I called the book John's Secret Dreams. That's the book of my book. Yes, please. No, I didn't write about Anne Frank because my book is about people, Jewish people, who helped other people escape and whatever. Anne Frank hid, and her story is very powerful and wonderful, and she was helped by 2 Christian people. So that didn't fall into the focus of my book. Good question, yes. You could come next, yes. What?
Are you a big reader?
Yes, I was a big reader. But you know what? When I was a kid, it's a long time ago. When I was a kid, there were no YA books, young adult books. As soon as you finished reading kids' books, you went to read adult books. It was a very different market. Yes, dear. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's many other people out there. You only pick specific people to write about?
What do you mean by specific?
Like people, like there were magnificent people, like people, specific people that you like the most.
I pick people, I get ideas from friends who are historians and writers. I do a lot of research, and I try to find a variety of people whom I might write about, who cover all things. In the book on Jewish Americans, there's a woman discus thrower who was in the Olympics. There's a photographer I never heard about. Now he's become quite famous. So I get a lot of information and then figure out who to write about or what event to write about. Yes, please.
Can you give us some tips on writing?
Well, what did I tell you? You need a hook, right? You need to find your own way to tell the story. You need to revise your work. You can't get away from that. And now, this is very important. Listen to these 2 sentences. This is going to be the most helpful thing I ever teach you. Hands down. Listen to these 2 sentences. The principal pointed to the boy in the back of the auditorium, and he raced across the auditorium up to the principal. The principal pointed to the boy in the auditorium, and he dragged his feet across the auditorium up to the principal. What word in the first sentence is different from the word in the second sentence? What is that word? No, that's the second sentence. Raced. Okay, let's talk about that word raced. How do you think that boy feels when he is racing across up to the principal? Yes? Excited, okay. How else do you think he feels? Why do you think he's happy? What's he thinking inside? He's racing because he's anticipating, he's thinking something good is going to happen. What about this boy in the second sentence? What about the boy in the second sentence? What's the word?
Nervous.
He's nervous. Why? What's the word? What was the word that was different? Might have forgotten. Drag. Okay. He's nervous. What else do we know about it? And if he's dragging his feet, what does that mean?
He might be scared.
He might be scared, yes?
Maybe the boy in the beginning he's trying to tell the principal the boy who's bad.
Well, that's very complicated and very good. But I'm a little simple when I'm thinking. Yes, dear?
Maybe tired.
He may, oh, all right. She thinks he could be tired. I think it's possible he could be tired, but yes?
He's embarrassed.
He's embarrassed. Does he want to get there? No, because he is dragging his feet. Let's look at the first word, race. When you are racing somewhere, it means you want to get there. Race, ran, jump. You are moving, leaning, stumbling, marching, strutting. Those are verbs. They show us an action that someone is doing. Dragged his feet. He's dragging, he's leaning. The woman is shouting, screaming, yelling, whispering, moaning, groaning. All those words are what? They are verbs. The verbs are the most important word in a sentence. So here's what I ask you to think about doing in the next month. I ask you to look at anything you finish writing. Look at each sentence, go to the verb, put a check over the verb, and see, is this the best verb I can think of to describe what's happening? Because verbs are the most important words, and verbs show us what somebody's feeling. They don't tell us. You don't want to tell the boy was scared. You want to say, no, his face got all white, and his body was trembling. That's much better writing than he was hope they're not mad at me about the spelling thing. I don't know, you never know with the teachers. Yes, Kate, question.
So you write a book, and then the illustrator illustrates it. Do you want to tell them what to illustrate?
Oh, excellent question. Do I tell the illustrator what to do? The answer is N-O, no. But,
What if you don't like it?
well, I do get a chance to look at the art to make sure that it is historically correct if it's on history. But the people I choose to work with are so great, I don't have to worry. I'm going to show you now. We're going to just look at something. As the writer needs a hook, a special way of doing it, the artist needs a hook. Let's look at the first painting. The first time we see Abraham Lincoln, when he is very little. What is the dominant or the thing you see most in this picture? What do you see most? What do you see most? What dominates it? The trees, and there he is, little. What is the artist saying? He's saying Abraham Lincoln is little. I never would have thought to have all those trees. Let's look at the next one. Abraham Lincoln is older, he's lanky, and he's long. He takes up like a whole page. In fact, you can't even see the bottom of it from his knees down because he's so tall and lanky. Kadir is saying, I want the kids to see that. See this little bird? That is the state bird of Illinois. Kadir went and did the research to make that bird there. And the whole sky is blue. Let's look at the next painting, and let's look at how different the background is, because it can get boring, the same background. A gorgeous sunset. So I don't have to tell the artists what to do. They do know what to do. They are really good, and I am blessed with them.
We're gonna have to wrap things up. So
Oh,
we have
no,
time
this is
for
terrible.
One more question.
One more question, but I think you better choose the person.
Oh.
I get it a lot.
Now I think I'll get
Oh, you'll get it. Oh, yes, the teacher has a question. A mom has a question. Respect for moms, yes.
I'll ask a question.
Loud and proud, please.
When you start the book, do you have a certain lesson you're trying to teach, but has it happened that sometimes that lesson has changed by the
I
time?
wouldn't use the word lesson. I would say I have a certain theme
Correct.
that I'm trying to develop. By the time I develop my theme, I've done enough research to know that that theme is going to work. My problem then becomes the focus, how to stay on target and not worry about what you leave out. Because there's nothing personal in the book about Martin Luther King and his family. There's only one focus. It's on the civil rights struggle. There's nothing personal about Lincoln. Now, in the book on Teddy Roosevelt that I just finished, his family is integral to it because Teddy Roosevelt was a madman, an incredible, crazy, wonderful father and conservationist. And the book is called To Dare Mighty Things. And the book has lots of tangents it goes off on, because he went off on tangents. But it's more focused and theme. I'm not trying to poke my fingers and tell a story. Anyway, I want to thank you for being a great audience, and this is why, listen, I want you to work hard on your writing. I want you to work hard on your basketball. I want you to work hard on your reading. I want you to work hard on everything you do, because it's great when you work hard.